This is the 5th day of January 2008. I made the trip up from Washington, D.C. to let them tell their stories because many of them are losing their homes and their businesses because of the court's lack of judicial discipline and its open promoting of judicial fraud by judges and the attorneys of, according to them, the attorneys of the county. So we're going to move on to it. I brought with me today a couple books that they can pick up at any public library, and you can go online. And most of these people have professed that they haven't even had any due process rights at all, that they're losing their homes and their businesses. And this is horrific, to say the very least. First, we have the Constitution of the state of Maryland. Been adopted and put into law by the state legislature, and of course the courts don't want to abide by that whatsoever. They think it's a joke. Then we have Volume 1 of the Maryland Rules, Maryland Rules, period, criminal and civil. This volume contains in it the practices and procedures that the courts and attorneys must take before they can take somebody's property, and they have circuit court, district court rules, circuit court rules, the appellate rules, and the law of evidences, which is under Title V of this rule. And you'll find this in the local library, and I would urge everybody to, actually you can buy this book for about, it's well worth the purchase price, so that you can educate yourself, because without it, they will take everyone. Then we move on to Title II, and this Title II includes the bankruptcy, federal and state bankruptcy code. It includes the code of professional conduct of judges and lawyers, and court personnel as to what happens and the manner in which our courts must operate. And when they go outside of these rules and they proceed to take somebody's property, let it be known that when a judge violates the Constitution knowingly from his bench to help somebody steal somebody's property, he's committing treason against the Constitution and fraud on the court. And he at that point should step down from the bench and renounce all pension rights and be criminally and civilly prosecuted by the victim. So let's move on, and Josie, I'll start here with you. And would you please announce, just say your name, what it's about, just a brief introduction of what we're here about today.
Okay, my name is Josie Ansera. I hired a lawyer, Mr. William Riddle, to be representing me on the divorce case. And it took about 3 years, cost me $40,000. He was appointed trustee by the judge of the court on my property, and he turned around and bought my property. And
excuse me, he bought your property?
Yes, he did. Under one of his LLCs, Sunday Drive LLC.
How did he get rights to your property?
I didn't know until after all courts were done and over. We went to court on December 14 and 15 of 2005, and he had done settlement with the local bank, which is the representative of the bank himself. Done settlement on December the 9th, 2005, was approved by the judge that the straw buyer that was on October 5 at the auction was to turn over the property to his LLC.
This is
Then I got the notice of all this, was never informed, and I own my own house.
Okay. Did he copy you with all his pleadings that he was filing in the court?
No, I never had them until I went to equity I was never informed of any of the transaction. I never signed the title of my property. I never signed the deed of my property. My ex-husband did sign over my property to my lawyer.
Okay, well, okay, then, you were joint signers though.
We were both trustees, but I never signed any of the transaction on my property.
Okay, well, this is a typical case. Let's move on to the next one, and then we'll get in more in depth.
My name's Carla Reeves.
Yeah, speak up, Paul.
My name's Carla Reeves. I have a daughter who is heir of property, and Mr. Riddle and Thomas Armour, which are partners in different LLCs. Basically, I'm fighting a losing battle. We've been through the courts and the orphans court. Mr. Riddle has interest in this property, and 100 acres. Josie, you know a little more about this. I'm nervous you're talking.
You gotta talk.
Okay, well, basically what's going on is, my daughter's getting nothing for her father's
Estate.
interest in the property, the estate, and the orphans court's allowing Mr. Riddle to do this. I raise question because of conflict of interest, because I feel that, it's a conflict of interest, and
He also represented you at times.
and he had also represented me in the past at times as well.
That's an absolute conflict of interest, and that. Now, once again, did you get any of the papers? Or were you furnished with all the papers of the, I guess it was a will? The estate papers, were you furnished with all the papers that were filed with the court so that you could object at that time, or was this all just dumped on you at one time?
It was dumped on me at one time. William had died without a will, and we have a child together. She was his only child.
Right.
And her uncle and Will Riddle is business partners, and they've already developed the property. And there's one, how much did the first house sell for? 800,000, and so on and so forth. My daughter's got zero. So they've taken from an orphan child, basically.
Okay, well, sounds like this is a classic case of open and shut frauds. Next in line. Yeah. Well, we'll pick up on the homeless. We'll come back to her.
Okay, yeah, 'cause I do want her to
Yeah.
tell me
Well, we're just
what
getting
her heart is and what she does.
We are just getting. I want the introductions. It's just an idea, and then we'll go on to each person, so we can, talk it
Okay.
out. That's what it's a round table, so we can let the public know, the people viewing this video, that this isn't just a simple, isolated incident. As I've reported in the past, there are over 110 programs on secretjustice.com. This is happening across the state of Maryland, and the appellate court judges who are overseers of our courts are doing nothing. The legislatures are doing nothing, and they feel that it's absolutely all right for these people to be robbed of their rights. So, third.
Name's Sam Brenna. I live in Port Deposit, Maryland. I had rented a 10,000 square foot shop space in Childs, Maryland, right outside Elkton. And landlords never fulfilled their obligation to repair the building, stop the leaking roofs, kept promising they would do so, making me offers on silent partnerships, making the future look good. Turns out they just wanted my business, my material, my machines. People started warning me about it. I was even told the place used to be a super fun cleanup, and I was never warned about it. And first lawyer I talked to was a conflict of interest, because one landlord is a lawyer, and they're all in cahoots. So I got another attorney, and went to court, found out that they were not even registered to do business in Maryland, like they were claiming they were. I don't know who paid
The-
taxes all those years.
The attorney wasn't registered, or the
They're-
corporation,
The corporation, Cecil Investments Limited.
well, Cecil Investments Limited is, under the Maryland, corporations and associations, any act that they engaged in is nullity. So if they took any action to recover anything from you, it's a fraud. So you can go out, go to the Maryland corporations and associations down on Preston Street in Baltimore, start researching it, build yourself a case. You have rights and recourses because you were defrauded. Yeah, who was involved in Cecil Investments?
Dave Woodward, an attorney out of Philadelphia. His father was an attorney in Elton, called him Woody Woodward. There's John Ford. I was always told that those were the only two in the company, but from people in the county investigating it, they have found that there's other lawyers in the company. And it just seems to be a big ring of lawyers.
The bank.
The bank,
What bank was that?
Cecil County Bank,
Cecil County.
Cecil Federal.
And
Mr. Federal.
you know who the owners of Cecil Federal are?
Well,
Anybody
I know
else
who's
involved
on-
with Cecil Federal?
Yes.
Everybody else appears to be involved
It's the
with
same bank that
Cecil
does all the
Cecil
settlements.
Federal, so we'll move on and we'll come back and get your story a little bit more in detail. And
Oh.
candidate number 4, step to the
Yeah.
table.
He's the
Yeah,
worst
I'm,
of them all.
I'm candidate number 4, but it actually all started with me.
Your name and.
Mark Welch. I hired Mr. Riddle. It's funny how first 4 people have spoken, he's the first name that comes up, Mr. Riddle. Mr. Riddle and I hired him in about February, March of '98 to hire him because the landlord who I was renting my business off of breached his contract with me I was ready to exercise an option to purchase this building. So I hire Mr. Riddle in, like I said, February, March of '98. I'll speed up everything here. If you want to get details, I guess if we want to get details in the room.
Well, we're gonna do, I just need an overview
Okay.
of.
All right.
So,
Bottom line is I hired Mr. Riddle, and this thing, a year later, was awarded our decision here in Cecil County Court for specific performance. The defendant appealed. It's another year. We go down to Annapolis. The appellate court, they uphold our decision. We went again. For some reason, still can't get rid of the settlement. This is now in 2000. And then Mr. Riddle, we lost our as close as we were before this. It began to separate.
We were personal friends.
But I was very personal friends. We vacationed together down the Outer Banks, golfing trips, football games, Ravens games, exchanged Christmas gifts, went out weekly as couples and friends. And so when it came down to about May of '03, he said that's our final oral argument that we have to go through. And I said, well, when can we expect settlement? He said I should get the decision back, say by the end of June. And then I got it written down on paper, something like that. But he told me we had to about the end of August for settlement. So, but I should have an answer, by the end of June. Well, I hadn't heard from him, and it's now July 23rd of '03. So I call him. Hey, I haven't heard from you in about 30 days. Have you heard anything from the appellate court? He said, oh yeah, that already came through. We won. I've already set up settlement for Thursday. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. He didn't even consult me whether I could make it. And so I said, okay, tell me what time so I can make my calls here. My wife can't make it that day. But my investor was out of town, and he wasn't going to be back until the second week of August. This is now July 30th, July 31st. And so I said, and Mr. Riddle informs me that, well, we got to go to, we need to get this thing done because we're going to lose this if we don't get to court. And I said, yeah, but my investor's not going to be in town for another week and a half. And he said, let's go. He said, I got the paperwork all drawn up. We'll just go ahead and do it. I'll put it in my name. give you 30 days for you and your investor to come in and we'll
Wow.
just reverse all the papers. So I sign everything there in the courtroom in front of the judge. In fact, you ought to see I get the stenographer's report. Again, people watching this, you can reach me at my email, mwelch@zoominternet.net, or
Yep.
go through this one here. And because I'll be glad to send you
So,
copies
so
of
in other
anything.
words, he had you sign over your rights to him,
Yeah,
all the rights,
He acted,
which you had already won and prevailed in.
right.
he acted like the main investor
And
to back him.
Yeah.
what an absolute fraud. Absolute. Okay.
I put $150,000 more money into the building, left me with a $253,000 debt in that business, and he even had to put basically a dime into it.
Well, it sounds similar to mine. The Saperstein Crime Syndicate stole my business, walked in, and with the help of a crew of sham lawyers, they formed a new corporation, allegedly bought a $2 million worth of assets for $5. And then when I went and signed their papers, they started beating me to death in court. And, you know, all the cases are over there. And, you know, they've openly admitted they never even paid $5, but our courts in Maryland were so corrupt that they keep this going, and Judge Bell and Judge Murphy are the ones I hold most responsible, because as appellate judges, they have the duty and responsibility to uphold and defend your constitutional rights and liberties, and they and the other judges in their court are just, they're actually promoting fraud and corruption. So I know where you're coming from.
Well,
I have $900,000 in liens against me today.
Well, I filed agreements with the Attorney Grievance
Oh,
Commission,
that's a joke.
and they investigated and found him guilty, but yet he still hasn't been billed.
The Attorney Grievance Committee actually found somebody
Oh, I
guilty.
have it. I don't know if you ever saw it or not. When it came back. Yeah.
They determined, supposedly from what I hear,
Identify
first
your-
off, my name's Nancy Shire. I was William Riddle's secretary for 5.5 years.
Okay.
They determined that they needed to make a decision because they did find that he was at fault to some degree. Did they want to suspend his license, revoke his license, charge him criminally, or would everyone agree that he could be publicly reprimanded and put on record so that if somebody actually wanted to look up on him as an attorney, they would find out that he had been reported to the Grievance Commission and there was a positive action against him. And that's what the decision ended up being, because everyone except one person on the board of the Grievance Commission voted to give him public record.
What an absolute fraud. But this shows you we have this wonderful new judicial center built in Annapolis. That's probably 45,000 square feet for training of judges and houses judicial disabilities, in the victims' rights center, and down there is it's a training ground for fraud, and the taxpayers are paying it, and nobody ever benefits. Victim number 5. No, you're number
John
5.
Marcelo Malinowski.
Oh, you
right.
together. Okay.
Yes.
Well, originally, we had purchased properties from Cecil Bank, had never had a problem with anything until, I think it was '04, we purchased a 10-unit building, and we assumed from the deeds at the courthouse that we were getting a building with, 10-unit building with 6 parking lots, or additional lots. And we thought that's what the bank informed us. We thought we were getting that. When we went to settlement, we found out that we only got the building, we didn't get the lots.
We didn't find a settlement. We found that at the settlement.
After settlement.
We got papers from the closing people that
The
did
courthouse, right?
the
closing.
settlement, which is 8 weeks later, that on the deed, I looked at the deed and I said, there's something wrong here. I said, it's only a building here. I said, where's the other lots? She said, I don't know. So we went to the courthouse, and Mr. Buckman, we took it to him in his office, just like we're talking to you, And we said to Mr. Buckman, I said, look, here's the deed before us, and here's the deed now. You explain how these lots got taken off of here, and they were on here? And he said, well,
He's,
he said, well, what happened was, the attorneys put this paperwork in, and I assume it's correct. And
He's an
they're
officer
officer
of
of
the
the court, so therefore we take it as verbatim.
And who was
and
the
it was
lawyer?
Mr. It was
And it
Mr.
was
Riddle.
Mr. Riddle, the lawyer who wrote up the contract, and who done the paperwork and done, and then,
He did the settlement too.
Yeah.
So
He has all these
he was
settlements.
representing all sides.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
bank-
In every
And
case.
the bank, the closing, the.
Writing the contract,
You know,
So then,
He's the bank's
so
lawyer.
in other words, he stole 6 of your lots.
well, he stole more than 6 lots, let me explain what
Well,
happened with brother.
so then we went back to the bank and we said, because the town of Elkton had closed us down, told us we could not operate the building until we got the 6 lots. So we went back to the bank and tried to talk to the, Mr. Sposato about getting the lots back. And, he obtained them, he told us from bankruptcy from the person before us, Mr. Charlie Walters, and, said they were gonna have to go to public auction, we were gonna have to buy them at auction. So we went to auction, and there were several other
Yeah, afterwards.
bidders there, and they knew that we needed the lots, but they continued to bid against us, and it went from 65,000 up to 108,000 that we had to pay for these lots for additional parking so we could operate.
Then,
Which then gave us a total of $504,000 for the building and the lots.
then the lawyer handling, again, the lots for the bank, that had the auction, held up settlement for 10 months. Why their lawyers holding up the settlement for 10 months, the bank's taking out, we had
Interest only loan?
No.
Well, we had an interest
loan,
only,
but we had
a lip balance
Limp out.
for repairs.
So
supposedly for
why,
repairs.
I kept calling Mr. Posado saying, hey, we're gonna sell here. He says, I don't know. And,
We're
time
working
went
on
by,
it.
we're working on it. And I finally called Mr. Posado in the board, in his boardroom, and I said, hey, look, we need to do something here. I said, time's going by here. I said, you guys are not giving me a break on the loan. You just keep taking money out for the loan. And-
Once again, I have to ask you, were you, so in other words, you're saying you went to closing, you weren't, until you walked into the closing room, you were not giving any papers explaining what, any of this, that these properties weren't part of it?
Right.
were you?
Right,
Okay, you went to closing in good faith,
yes.
Signed everything.
and you hired, you had an attorney. Don't feel bad, it happened to me. And I was
Sorry.
sitting in a line of 8 candidates for Congress on Thursday in a congressional debate, and it happened twice to me. So it happens, we don't worry about that.
But anyhow, we went to settlement on the properties.
10
and-
months later.
But see, the thing is everything up to that point's a fraud.
It's
Right.
the same lawyer.
It's everything is a fraud because you weren't given, every right that you had was violated. Okay, and it's a classic corporate fraud.
Well, he's worked, I understand it's not a conflict of interest. How does an attorney can work for the bank, work for settlement
Can't
on
do
the
that.
property,
Can't do
and also, we also found out,
The last settlement, we had our own attorney do it, but it still held up for 10 months.
Well,
It wasn't- it
in
was
that time,
Frank's attorney
they're
that
trying
was
to
tying it.
force you, what they were trying to do is to force you into bankruptcy.
Right.
So they could roll it over again, and the bankruptcy
Which they
courts,
did.
the bankruptcy court system in the state of Maryland is the most corrupt in the nation.
Worst, I found that out.
I argued
Bankruptcy
before
court.
Chief Judge Massetti, no, it wasn't Massetti, no, Peter J. Massetti. I argued before the Chief Judge in 1995 in the United States Bankruptcy Court of Greenbelt. The guy who sold my business had embezzled $250,000 from it 90 days before he went into bankruptcy. And we fired him. He wasn't even an owner. Okay?
how to get him the right.
So I'm going into the bankruptcy court after 4 or 5 years. Finally, I went out, I stopped hiring lawyers, and that's when I bought these. And I started reading, And I found out that everything that my lawyers were telling me after I'd spent almost $100,000 in legal fees, was a fraud. So I filed my own motion to reopen the case in the U.S. Bankruptcy Court. They're so dirty. They're so dirty. The first time I filed it, the judge had the gall and the audacity to stand up and tell me that, well, Mr. McDermott, this court has no jurisdiction over fraud in the court. Hold it. He's still in bankruptcy. You're still the judge. You're the judge who he lied to get into bankruptcy. But you have no jurisdiction to correct that. Well, I saw Title 18 right here. And if you look up to 18 U.S.C. 3057 of the United States Criminal Code, you'll find out that he has an absolute duty and a responsibility to report it to the U.S. Attorney, not me, not anybody else, and ask for a federal grand jury investigation. So I took that. Then I took it on appeal. Well, why I took it on appeal, they tried another dirty trick. They brought in a circuit court judge from Prince George's County and held an emergency dismissal hearing without notifying the creditors. Now, this is a federal offense to have a circuit court judge set on a federal bench. And he came in and he says, well, we're dismissing the case. We don't care what you do. So I didn't care. I just filed another appeal. 20 days later, I go back in and check the court's records. And this is why you have to go in and she'll tell you, it's your response. It's part of what I see here is you've not been told that we need to go in and to check all the case dockets, get the copy of the dockets, read over these dockets, and find out what your rights and liberties are, and what criminal, that docket is your roadmap to recovery. Okay? So, 30 days later, I go into the court, in 5 days before the hearing, I'm checking the docket, I'm having another emergency hearing. Okay. So I go in, and I filed a motion in opposition, and I argued it. And I knew the minute I walked through the court, the judge was, he was already in their pocket. And I said, well, Your Honor, I can see already from your attitude that you're going to dismiss it without us to move ahead. So, would you tell me for the record, and my investors who are sitting behind me, what the court plans to do about the $350,000 that the debtor embezzled from me 90 days before he went into bankruptcy and did not report it on his financial disclosure statement? And this arrogant, really arrogant piece of crap of a judge stood up in his bench. Mr. McDermott, I or this court could care less if he embezzled $2 million from you the day before he went into bankruptcy. It's not a matter before my court. And I said, thank you, Your Honor. It's on the record. Madam Transcriber, I would like an emergency copy of this transcript by tomorrow morning, and I don't care what it costs. Tomorrow afternoon, I will be down at the General Counsel of the United States Court System asking for your impeachment and indictment for fraud against the court and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Have a good day under Title 18 U.S.C. 3057 of the United States Criminal Code. Have a good day, Your Honor. So you have to stand up. And it's on the record. It's in the United States Supreme Court. That record's in the Supreme Court. It's in the District Court. It's in the National Archives. So anything I tell you. But they want you to back down. They want you to die. They want you to have a heart attack and die. Because then this won't come out. And we cannot allow that. We can't sell our property and sneak off to another county or another state. We have to stand up there, just like you, marshal your unified assets. All of you have knowledge in different fields. Marshal your assets. Help each other file the appropriate papers to reopen all of these cases and to sue these judges and lawyers who have robbed you of your rights and liberties.
But some of them are judges, some of them are the court themselves.
That's
The
judges
court
and judges.
clerks.
Title 16 of this book, Maryland Rules, tells you what a judge's responsibility is. When he goes outside that responsibility, he becomes civilly liable to you. And the state becomes liable to you because he was an agent of the state. You can sue the state. So that's why they make these rules, for the protection of the people of the United States, not to protect black robe bandits who steal your property.
Key is to educate yourself. That's the key.
The key is to educate yourselves. Now, we're moving on. We're going to come back to you, but
My name's Nancy Shire. I was, like I said, Mr. Riddle's legal secretary for five and a half years. I have knowledge of 4 cases that are sitting here. And the key to all of this is knowledge. You have to educate yourself because the judicial system, I have heard, which I didn't know much about it before all of this, banks on you not having that knowledge, and it is basically for them. They take an oath when they become an attorney or a judge to uphold the rights of citizens and blah, blah, blah.
It's
That
called-
is not the rights that they take. The rights they take are to stay together as a unity in the justice system, and they do not uphold the rights of normal civil people.
it's called, I take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution
Right.
against all
Constitution.
enemies, foreign and domestic.
Correct.
Okay? And when they don't do that, then they betrayed their oath but like you said, it's a buddy system. Once you get, you were his legal secretary. I want to ask you one question on the record. How many times did you renew his law license with the state of Maryland while you were his secretary?
He only did it once while I was there. I believe.
But I mean, does he have a license? Now, I'm not talking about his bar card. Not his bar card.
License.
He has a license as a practicing attorney.
Yes, in the state of Maryland, and he did have one in Pennsylvania.
Okay. Because the bar card is nothing more than a union card.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, that gives them no rights to go into any court and to do anything. And I've been trying to get the Court of Appeals to give me a copy of it. I want to see what it entitles them, because when the American Bar Association was originally formed, it was formed for one purpose. It was formed to be an advocate for the infirmed and the insane and the helpless people. It never went far enough in their articles of incorporation to allow them to become the hammer for the wealthy to steal the rights and liberties of our citizens. And that's what it has become. It's become a hammer where you get that license, then you and your partners can loot this country of every asset we have.
Well, the one thing that I learned, and I did not know that some of the things were going on until after the fact. Mr. Welch's case, I had just started working there, and I knew they were friends, personal friends. I did not find out about the defraud on him until after the grievance, or right at the grievance, and he did defraud him. I do have personal knowledge of something that he did, documents being doctored, date-wise, to make him legally own that piece of property, because he actually did it and did not do it on the correct date. So he actually would not have owned it. He had a 10-day period,
Right.
and he did not fall within that 10 days. They doctored that document, got it to the
Land records.
appraiser or whoever, and they got it down to the courthouse, and it went through. So that's when I found out that he had defrauded him. And I do know that he was scared that the grievance commission, and thought that he was going to lose his license for that. prepared himself, but then when he didn't and he only got snapped on the hands, it pretty much gave him the confidence and the power to be just so crazy and became greedy and started, if I can get away with it, I'm going to do it again. Second case being
Yeah.
Josie that I knew about because Charlie's case, he's a personal friend of mine, and I did not know at all about his case until everything was done and over with. Josie's case was the second case. She was a 4.5-year client from a domestic case, and this drew out, and the attorney did not represent her properly. First off, as a domestic attorney, he started giving outlandish retainer fees to clients that he didn't think he wanted to take, thinking it would deter them from hiring him. And the reason I'll tell you what the reason I'm telling you that. And then when they would actually hire him and give him that retainer, he was stuck, so he wouldn't represent them properly. He would just do what he had to do to get by and make them think that he was representing them. But he did not do the actual hard work on a case, a nasty domestic case, to make sure that it was handled properly and represent the client properly.
Right, that's the key.
So in her case, he did not do that. He thought she was a hassle and a pain, and every case she ever went to court with against her ex-husband, every time there was a court case, she lost in the 4.5 years. After he was no longer her attorney, she went to court by herself with just a little bit of support from me, and won the first case in 4 years by herself against the court, the same judge, the same situations, and she won that case. And it just goes to show that he did not properly represent her, because with him being a smart attorney and as educated as he is, and her representative, he could have won those cases, but did not choose to represent her properly.
And see, this is where the majority of the people in this country today go to an attorney based on the facts and the law in these books, and go to them in good faith, and they're asked to turn over their entire life to that attorney, and 90% of the attorneys disrespect, and rob their clients to amass great wealth for themselves. You know, most people don't realize that in the first place, and I said this in the congressional debate the other day, just as it's the last 2 years, 7,900 complaints have been given against federal judges for breaching the court rules and these are only the cases that are reported by attorneys. The pro se cases never get reported. They don't, and that's a staggering amount of cases. But the 7,000 cases, 7 federal judges were reprimanded. Now, I don't know of a business or any group of people in this universe that can be that perfect. There's no business that can operate that there's that small a failure rate. I mean, it's incomprehensible. But while they're doing it, they're robbing the livelihood of this nation and shipping it overseas. And this has got to stop. We have to make the American Bar Association responsible or kick it out of our judicial system. If they can't operate in a manner that's within the law, then the United States Criminal Code provides for relief, and the FBI and the Justice Department need to step up to the plate and come out here and represent all of you. They need to interview each and every one of you, and they have to put this man where he belongs, in a penitentiary for a long time.
Well, I want to say a little bit more because,
Okay, fine.
like I said, Josie's case was the biggest case, but it was also different. It was they're all different. Hers
Oh,
was
yes.
domestic, hers was an estate. His was commercial. His is commercial. with her case, he then turned around, purchased her property after representing her for 4 years, purchased her property as settlement under one of his little corporate. He had
Somebody run that
like
out.
5 corporations that he had formed to buy. He was an investor, so to buy properties, he formed at least I think 5 different corporations, and he bought her property under one of those corporations under false pretenses. And then when she found out about it, she took it to the grievance commission, and all along, her and I both were under the impression by the grievance commission, me an investigator, that they had enough evidence against him. I had nothing to gain or lose. I had lost my job because I could not stand the fact that I had knowledge now about his actions and defrauding normal people every day and making them believe that he was there on their behalf. I couldn't stand it anymore when I found out the truth, so I left there. Through the grievance commission, we were led to believe that they trusted and believed me because I had nothing to gain by this. I
Right.
still don't. If anything, I feared for my life from him because he knows enough people, and through working for him and knowing all this now, I know that he knew enough people that my life was in danger for if I'd come out and say anything. And I feared for her life because she doesn't know how to represent herself sometimes, and she was letting people know that I didn't think she should let know right away. The grievance commission, the whole entire 7 months they investigated it, told us that they had enough evidence against him. He did buy the property under false pretenses. The very first interview, the investigator found out that he lied to them right off the bat because he said he had no interest in the corporation that bought her property. He had no knowledge, and he didn't want her property.
What was the investigator's name on that?
Mr. Paraguay, I don't think.
Mr. Paraguay?
Michael Paraguay. And the issue with that is, when he found out he lied, and how he found out he lied, is because Mr. Riddle was not only the managing member of the LLC that bought her property, he put his mother on as the owner of the LLC, which was not true. I know that myself, just from working for him. So he lied all the way around the book. He lied and said he had no knowledge of it. He lied and said he had no interest in the corporation and had no interest in her property. When all along, the LLC that he owned and was managing member and could sign for bought the property. After 7 months of investigation, the decision comes. The last phone call from him was, everything's fine, I have one more person to interview, and everything looks great. We never heard from him again until actually we never heard from him ever again. We got the decision, they denied, said there was no, it was unfounded.
No, yeah.
It was unfounded, there was nothing, he did nothing to,
And it shows you how ludicrous the system is. They actually send letters to the lawyers, and the lawyers write their own defenses. You know, and I've reported the original lawyers at the bottom of my scam for years. There's tons of documents in their record, and you know, I think the what was it, the Capital News Service did a story a week or two ago on. They investigated the effectiveness of the Maryland Bar Commission. And the reporter laughed, and she said, "This is the silliest thing I've ever heard of in my life." She said, it's absolutely absurd what they think that they can get away with. She was appalled. And it goes right back down to the fact that we've got an ineffective judicial system that is reeked with fraud for decades. And now that we're getting smart enough that we have access to the internet, that we have access to libraries that can give us these books. This has been going on for generation upon generation. But it's gotten much worse since 1970, when they became allowed to advertise. Up until then, they had to get clients the old-fashioned way. They had to work for them. If you were coming to my office, somebody had to recommend you. Once they became where they could get advertising, now come into me. Even if here don't have a problem, we'll create one and we'll defraud the insurance company for you.
Ambulance chasers.
Okay?
Um,
So I agree with everything that you said. I think it's, and that's why I drove all the way up here from Washington D.C.